Now we take the set of doors that you've drilled, make sure you're using the right hinge. I only have 3 or 4 different kinds, but and for the most part, this is it. With the gray on it, it's a soft close hinge. So just line it up right there, and please put the mat down, because by hitting on this, my table is not perfectly flat. Drips of glue everywhere, little bits of whatever. Make sure there's something soft under it. Take a hammer and just tap only where the screws are. You don't want to hit in the middle, because you'll bend the part that makes it a soft close. There, that's in, and repeat. Then just set it aside on another mat and slide the other one over. Those of you that know better know that that previous machine can be used to insert these. Why don't we use it? Because it's too easy to mess up. And there we go. Hinges are in, and now you're ready to install these doors into the cabinet. Last thing is to get a few other parts together. We're going to need this box of what's called Posi screws. Let me show you. There's a picture right there, but they look like this. They don't have a sharp tip at all. They're very fat. They're specific for what we're doing. In addition, we need to take this tip out, this yellow one out. It's the wrong size. It's going to strip quite a bit. So we use one that has a black line around it. It's a little worn out, but you can still see it. Slip that right in. Now, those tips are going to be found in this little red bag that's always in the box with the screws. They're very specific for these screws. We don't want to strip them out. Now, we take a door, and to figure out which side it goes on, let me quick turn the cabinet just a little bit so you can see the holes. We put the door here so that it's sitting on the floor, on the table in this case. And if the hinge comes between 2 of the holes, right in between 2 of the holes, that's where it goes. Now, to get them in between the holes, I would have to lift it quite a bit. So, and it, kind of hits this drawer front that's already on this false front. So, flip it over to the other side. So quick, turn this a little bit. And now we put it here. And sure enough, it's almost exactly between the 2 holes on this side. Ideally, I should have to lift it up about 1/16 of an inch to get it right on the money, but that's perfect. Once you know which side that goes on, just take a pencil, okay? And I just put a little tick mark, a little line in between the 2 holes where it's got to be drilled in. Set your door aside. And since I already know that the doors were cut at the same time, the hinges should be even. Wherever I put the plates on the right, I'm going to have to put the plates on the left. So now we screw the plates in. These are the hinge plates that we're going to put in. So let me get a little closer. On the front, you can see an arrow. The arrow points to the front of the cabinet. So it will go in wrong. But you need to make sure that the arrow points to the front of the cabinet. So, arrow's pointing to me, and I put it on the line that I just drew and screw it into both holes. Don't over tighten, because otherwise you'll strip the screw, like we mentioned before. Okay, and then put in 2 more for the other side. Arrow is pointing outside the cabinet. And then repeat and do the same, put the brackets in on the other side. Take the door, and now it's time to put it in. Now, it's hard to show, but right here on the hinge, there's a little bit of a hook. So we have to push the door and hook the front in like that. So it's hooked in, and then you kind of push the backside in. Give it a hit. And just like that and that. Sometimes it is a lot harder than that to put in, and I understand. So sometimes you have to press upward a little, sometimes you have to push down a little. If you're off a little when you were drilling, they weren't exactly on the holes, It varies, but try it out. Just hook it in and then shut the door. The soft close engages, and you can see now the door is nice and lined up with a proper gap. I'll get into how to adjust that a little bit later. Then do the other side. Now it's time to make final adjustments on the door. It's hard to see, but these doors don't actually close because one of the doors are touching in the middle. Now mathematically, we cut the doors correctly, so that means some of the hinges need to be adjusted. So here's a quick breakdown. Here's a hinge, and this first one is the one you'll be adjusting most often. Okay, this is the one that takes the door left or right, this way or this way. Okay, so as you can see, I can push it closed, but there's zero gap. We have to move this door to the left a little bit. We'll get to that in a second. The second one here, this one takes the doors in and out. And why would you need that? Because if the bottom hits and the top doesn't, then you get this kind of rattling, okay? So what I need to do is bring the top out a hair or in a hair to match whatever the bottom is, or vice versa, depending on which way the door is in. So this is the one, the first one you'll use most often. This one we'll use last. And last, if the doors aren't the same height up and down, I can see that this door on this side is slightly higher than that one over here, where the hinge is. I'm not worried about the middle, just where the hinge is, because that can't move. That's where the bracket comes into play. There's an adjustment right here. So that is for adjusting the door up and down slightly. So here we go. I first do the hinge side. Do the doors need to go up and down? I already said this side needs to go up a little bit because I can see on the ends they're not the same. So I put that into the bracket and I'm going to tighten and loosen depending on which direction I need to go. In this case it's a loosening direction, but you'll figure that out as you're playing with it a little. All right, so now that gap matches that gap. That's all I'm after for now. Now I need to, it's hard to explain, this one has a bigger gap, so I need to twist that down this way. And there's no gap here, so I could also go left. Top needs to go left, so I'm going to do the first one that I mentioned and screw that in so that that gap is a little bit better. Okay, that looks a lot better straight. My bottom now has an uneven gap, but my top is already straight. So what that means, if I can't, I mean, these are correct, which means whatever adjustment I have to make on one door, I'd have to make on both. So both of them will have to come apart slightly so that they stay even at the top. So just a little bit. Maybe a quarter of a turn there, and then a quarter of a turn there, and let's see, that's a lot better. Now that that's done, both of them have some knocking, okay? So they're not straight. So this one's at the bottom, which means the gap is at the bottom. So I either pull the top out or I push the bottom in. Either one works. I tend to pull ones out more than in. If it goes in too far, it'll bind. I'll get into that another time. I'm doing that last screw and pulling the door out slightly. Now it's gone. Now we do the same here. This one's at the top, so that means the bottom has to come out a little. And we check. Good, and that's it. The doors are now square, the gaps are even. The very last step now is to put on these little rubber dots. We don't want the doors, well, they're never gonna slam because they are soft close, but the hinge has a gap on the sides. The door is actually out a decent amount, at least 1/8 of an inch from the cabinet, so they don't rub. These little bumpers help even that out. So all the doors, top and bottom. We don't put them on the cabinet, we put them on the doors, top and bottom in the corner. And now that's nice and flat and adjusted correctly.